Daga was rescued from a slave ship by the Royal Navy, then executed by the British Army less than a year later. Both events happened under British power, but through different institutions with different roles. One branch intercepted the ship at sea, another later held the authority to punish him. That split is the mechanism behind the shock. Rescue did not mean legal safety, because being freed by the Navy did not stop the Army from treating him as punishable. Less than a year after that rescue, Daga was executed by the British Army. The timeline turns a liberation story into a second act of state violence. Daga's life is remembered as a blunt fact of imperial contradiction. One arm of the empire pulled him from a slave ship, and another ended his life soon after. When Truganini died, Tasmania's Aboriginal population was declared extinct, even though that claim was wrong. She was widely described as the last surviving Aboriginal Tasmanian, a label that made her death seem like the end of a people. Truganini was a Noonan woman from Bruny Island, and she grew up during the Black War as colonization displaced many Aboriginal families. Later, she guided George Augustus Robinson on expeditions that helped remove the remaining Aboriginal population from Tasmania. So one woman's death was treated as a public ending, while the mistaken idea of extinction outlived the people it claimed to describe. In Barcelona, dockworkers turned large rolls of paper into barricades during the July 1936 military uprising. The setting was a working port, where paper arrived as heavy cargo, not as a defensive material. The rolls were already large enough to move with effort. Workers stacked those industrial rolls together and used their bulk as a barrier. The barricade was improvised from the materials already on the docks. That turned the workplace into a resistance point during the uprising. The docks became a place where labor and emergency overlapped. Paper, meant for shipping, was suddenly holding a line in a city under military upheaval. The image of those rolls stayed tied to improvised resistance. Reinhard Hohn, a former Nazi officer, later helped found a business school after the Second World War. Before that, his name belonged to the wartime world of the Nazi state, not to education. After 1945, he entered a new public role in a changed country. The decisive step was not private retreat. He founded a school, turning post-war reinvention into an institution with a public face and a clear purpose. That move placed him inside post-war education, where the same person could shape training and management from within a new system. The contrast was stark and documented. Reinhard Hohn's career shows how post-war institutions could be rebuilt by people with difficult pasts. A former Nazi officer became a founder in education, and that reversal remained part of the record. The cast of Winter Kept Us Warm was not told its queer subject matter. That meant people were performing scenes without full context for what the film was really about. The production sat at the meeting point of cinema and queer history. The concealment itself was the mechanism. By limiting what the cast knew, filmmakers controlled how much meaning could be named during production. Released in 1965, the film carried that hidden context into its making. The cast's understanding was shaped by what was withheld from them. So Winter Kept Us Warm became a film history example of concealment inside a queer-themed production. The result is a finished work marked by what the cast was never told. A cartel was formed to buy papyri for the Berlin Papyrus collection. Papyri were ancient texts, not a normal commodity. That made each piece scarce, fragile, and worth competing over. The buyers coordinated instead of bidding alone. That kind of organized buying turned acquisition into a shared strategy for one collection. The target was the Berlin Papyrus collection. Its needs helped shape the market around what could be secured, not just what was found. In practice, rare manuscripts could be treated like prized objects in a coordinated market. The Berlin collection sat at the center of that competition. In Eastern Han-Tum art, 7 women attacking an official was praised as filial piety. This motif is called the Revenge of the 7 Daughters. It appears again and again in funerary art across Han tombs. No full text survives. From pictures and a few inscriptions, scholars infer that the sisters avenged their father after he was wrongly sentenced to death. The story places the ambush on a bridge, where the official's carriage was intercepted. That made revenge look like a family duty, not a private grudge. Its popularity in tombs shows how strongly Han culture honored filial piety. Later dynasties still valued family duty, but they discouraged vigilantism like this. Jan Swierk and 8 other Catholic priests were murdered at Auschwitz and Dachau, then later recognized as martyrs by Pope Leo XIV. The Church did not make that judgment during the war. It came after the killings, when their deaths could be examined as part of official remembrance. Martyrdom is the Church's formal word for death accepted as witness to faith. Here, that judgment linked Nazi camp violence to a religious verdict about the priests' lives and deaths. That recognition grouped Jan Swierk with 8 other priests in one official act. Their deaths were no longer only recorded as camp losses. They entered official Catholic memory as martyrs from Auschwitz and Dachau. The record now names persecution, place, and judgment together.